most illegal immigration is coming from our southern border. I've said many times that the American people will not pay for the wall. And I've made that clear to the government of Mexico. NAFTA has been a terrible deal, a total disaster for the United States from its inception, costing us as much as $60 billion a year with Mexico alone in trade deficits. You say, who negotiates these deals? Not to mention millions of jobs and thousands of factories and plants closing down all over our country.
That was U.S. President Donald Trump talking about the North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA, which is a three-country accord negotiated by the governments of Canada, Mexico, and the United States, and it came into force in January 1994. Trump has signed many executive orders cancelling such agreements. The latest agreement is one brokered by former U.S. President Barack Obama that is called the Trans-Pacific Partnership between 11 Asian countries. The South Africa's notable trade deal with the U.S. is the African Growth and Opportunity Act, which is AGOA, which has been in existence since the year 2000. The next 100 days of Trump presidency is very crucial to see as to how the next 4 years of his administration will operate. All of this is bound to cause cautious or negative effects to the global economy, which will most certainly have a knock-off effect on us in South Africa. To speak to us about this, we're joined by Isaac Odendaal. He is the investment strategist at Old Mutual Multi-Managers, and he's live from our studios in Sea Point in Cape Town. Mr. Odendaal, good morning to you and welcome to Morning Live.
Hi, good morning.
Now, what are the likely effects of Donald Trump's presidency in the next 100 days if we were to bring it home here and look at the rand?
Yeah, so the interesting thing about the Donald Trump's election victory and you know, he's taking office, and now the first couple of days that have certainly been very eventful. The rand has been well behaved. You know, if you compare where the rand is today, where it was a year ago, for instance, it's now about 13.40. It was close to 16 to the dollar a year ago. So far the rand has been fairly well behaved. There are obviously big global factors at play here, and Trump will be one of those factors. And I think one of the issues that the markets are grappling with is what exactly does Donald Trump mean for the US dollar? Because if you think about it, a lot of what he says in terms of creating jobs in America and reviving manufacturing in America requires a weak dollar. A weak dollar would be beneficial for him and for that side of his agenda. On the other hand, typically when there is uncertainty in the world, and also when you have the prospect of rising US interest rates, which we do, that typically is good for the dollar, and you have a stronger dollar. So a lot really depends on how the dollar reacts. That tends to influence, again, what happens to the rand, and then you know, we get into the domestic influences of the rand. We look at inflation and obviously then how the Reserve Bank reacts.
Yeah,
so you're quite right. It is definitely going to be something to watch.
Yeah. Talking about the inflation, are we likely to see, you know, an increase in inflation if the rand weakens against the greenback? Because we do know that imports are bought with dollars.
Yeah, typically when the rand weakens, there is a lagged impact on inflation, and we saw that. I mean, remember the rand weakened substantially from 2011 on to 2015, and we saw some impact on inflation from that weakening. And I think one of the reasons why the rand hasn't responded to Donald Trump is precisely because it weakened much earlier. So we almost took our knocks a couple of years ago, and we're kind of better prepared for that now. But certainly if the rand weakens, you would expect there to be some influence on inflation. Interestingly, that influence over the last 8 years has not been as much as it's been historically.
But we also have trade agreements with the U.S., like I mentioned on my introduction, like AGOA. And we've seen President Trump stating that he intends re-looking at those trade agreements to return what he calls beneficiation to Americans. Is it really going to impact on us, you know, whatever decision he takes on this?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to South Africa and Africa, I don't think we're really on the radar screen, and that's possibly a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing in the sense that his target clearly is Mexico, and China being second in line there. So that's a good thing. I don't think he really is going to bother attacking South Africa and the AGOA arrangement. At the same time, I think it also means that in terms of his foreign aid and development agenda, that's going to be Africa's going to be much lower down his pecking order than it was with previous U.S. presidents.
But I would like
to,
yeah,
I think another thing to remember about AGOA is it is an act of Congress. So it is not something that I think Donald Trump can unilaterally upend or repeal.
There are South Africans who invest, in the U.S. using dollars, of course. Are they likely to see erosion in terms of their gains? Should they be worried as it is now?
Yeah, so the interesting thing that's happened is that since Donald Trump, won that shock election, and by shock I mean it was a huge surprise, is that the markets actually responded in the opposite way that you would expect. The markets, equity markets specifically in the U.S., rallied quite strongly. So South Africans who invest in the U.S. and in U.S. shares would have done very well in dollar terms, but obviously because the rand has been quite strong, we haven't seen the benefit of that in rand terms. So South Africans investing abroad just need to consider what is it that I want? Do I want dollar returns or do I want rand returns?
Right.
And if you want dollar returns, then you have actually done reasonably well over the last couple of months. If you want rand returns, the rand has strengthened and that has negated some of those dollar returns. But then the argument is always you need to think quite long term because we know that the rand is very volatile in the short term.
All right.
It is an extremely volatile currency.
Okay, no, let's leave it at that. But thank you so much for that clarity. That's Isaac Odendal. He is the investment strategist at Old Mutual Multi-Managers, talking to us about if we're likely to see the effects of, the agreements that South Africa has with the U.S.